Thank you very much for joining CNBC Africa Special. My name is Stephen Muvunyi. Rwanda's capital, Kigali, has made a name for itself as one of the safest and cleanest cities on the continent. Today, we sit down with Mayor Pudence Rubingisa, who is going to discuss ways to sustain that and more on the city's development. Mayor, thank you very much for your time to speak to CNBC Africa. Now, it's close to a year since you assumed office as the mayor of the city. Could you guide us through some of the things you had set yourself as priorities?
Thank you so much, Stephen, for giving me this opportunity to interact with you on the dynamics behind the city of Kigali. Yes, it's been almost a year since I'm in the office. Last year in August, mid-August, when I joined the city hall in the new office, I had set key priorities. Number one was to improve the public transport in the city of Kigali. As you can see, we've been experiencing really issues related to public transport, and policies are there. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, we had to put mechanisms in place so that where my predecessors, stopped, I had to chip in and also continue on the same pace, if not improve on the public transport. That is number one. Number two was also to improve the housing. The housing, when you look at the density and the city of Kigali, when you look at the suburbs that we have, but also the high-risk zones that have been identified in Kigali, I realized that we also need to put an emphasis on that element and also see how we can upgrade, the informal settlements, so that everybody can have a shelter, a decent shelter in, an area that is not putting his or her life in danger. Yes, those were the main ones. And of course, as a city, the main objective also to lead the objectives that are being set, but also extracted from the key guiding documents, the 7-year government plan, but also specifically the city strategic plan that is also pro-people, where we provide services to people, approaching them, considering their views and wishes as far as the city development is concerned.
All right. Are there any policies or programs that you've already implemented or that you intend to put in place to make sure you reach those targets?
Yes, of course, as I said, there are already policies that have been established with regard to public transport, and this is done also in conjunction, in consultation with other stakeholders through the Minister of Infrastructure that has the transport component, but also the Rwanda Housing Authority with regard to the housing and affordable houses. That is also a key policy that is already in place. So our mandate is again to see how those existing policies can be easily implemented. However, when you put things in the context of the current situation where the entire world, but also the city of Kigali, is really challenged by the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, we are seeing how we can adjust some of the policies to the realities in a positive way. For instance, the Kigali we want is a smart city, smart in terms of putting in place electronic way of offering services, but also seeing how the lessons learned through the COVID-19 can be positively impacting on the changing of the city. Now, as you can see, our services are online. A few remaining services have been really put online because we were forced to take that route during the confinement, where essential services kept running, but also financial transactions are fully, turning into, online transactions through mobile money, but also e-banking. So that is also another policy that has already been there, but we are now trying to fast track and move very fast.
One of the things that keep attracting controversy is the fact that the growth of the city is not inclusive. Some people argue that the disadvantaged people are actually left out. So how are you coping with this one?
I totally disagree with that statement, because the way our master plan of the city of Kigali, as it has been revised, because we've been following the master plan of 2013. Now, one of the drivers that put us on the table and make sure that we revise it was to make it more inclusive. So when you look at the new master plan, it brings everyone on board. First of all, the consultative way of collecting ideas on how people in Kigali want their city. So the consultation exercise was conducted, and now the master plan, the way it is now, it is so inclusive so that everyone finds his place and his wish as far as the implementation of that master plan is concerned. So it's a journey, understand, because it is a master plan of 2050. So we are seeing Kigali in 30 years to come, and it's going to be really inclusive, where even the existing informal settlements qualified being suburbs or slums are we have already started upgrading them so that people find their places in Kigali and contribute to the development of the Kigali, be it social or economic development.
The issue of affordable housing, it has always been discussed. There have always been initiatives to develop affordable houses, but it seems like this never materializes. If you speak to people around, they'll be telling you the houses, the buildings that are supposed to be affordable aren't actually affordable. So what's the way around this?
Well, when you look at the way the designing of the master plan was conducted, of course we had to do a survey. Now, what we call the housing market survey was also conducted, but also the real estate market survey to consider the market dynamics, but also the economic dynamics of the city. And what I can say, probably as an ambitious city, we delayed a bit to have that dream materialized, because the 9 suburbs that we have, with more or less 11,000 households that have to get a decent shelter, which currently probably we can see in the high-risk zones. You understand that we need to do it in phases gradually as the means allow. We strategically we are interesting also the private sector to chip in, and also as a government we allow a certain investment platform whereby this joint venture or joint efforts can be done to make this happen. Well, it's a very ambitious plan when you look at the needs of the population around Kigali, but it is feasible gradually in phases. So yes, we recognize the delay in implementing it, because we can't wake up in the morning and have it happen. So it's one element is consider the studies done, the market survey has been conducted, we know what we want, we know where to implement the project, we know the demand, and we can now customize the needs to the demand of our population, given also the different earnings that these people can get at the end of the month, so that we organize an investment platform and we bring investors, we interact with the private sector and also other partners to see how we can jointly make this happen.
Yeah, could you shed some light on the the creation of jobs, the program to create jobs throughout these phases?
Okay, well, it is the creation of jobs. It is in line with, and of course, with the national employment policy that was jointly developed by the social cluster in the government. And of course, we, as the city of Kigali, we have also a target which is in line with certain assumption that we put in place as the way we see the Kigali in 2050. So currently, we've got 1.6 million people living in Kigali. So our projections show that in 2050 we'll be having 3.8 million living in Kigali. So therefore, as I said, the market survey was based again on those assumptions where we intend to create, to develop our existing land in Kigali in a way that we can be able to provide a shelter, affordable shelter to a maximum number of needy people. At the same time, creating job as a our target, we plan to, by 2050, having created 1.8 million jobs. So you understand there is a real estate development that is expected to generate jobs, but also the economic, the entire sector behind, and as the Kigali is developed along the way, will also be able to contribute to that target, and it can be able to reach 1.8 million jobs created by 2050.
Right. Talk to us about the upscale housing and how viable that is and some of the challenges that are associated with that.
Well, the challenges, first of all, is, as I said, the city of Kigali, we are a very ambitious city. We want really to move very fast. Now, currently, we are putting things in the context where the entire world is being affected by, there is that economic shock that we are facing due to the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. However, we are trying to adjust our very ambitious plan to the realities with the means that we have to be able to achieve our objectives. And particularly on the element of housing, a challenge is again to be able to mobilize resources or be able to also to bring on board the private sector. You understand that this is not a business that can be done by a municipality only or the government only. So we need to create that conducive, investment platform whereby people can be brought on board. The policy that we are following now as a government, of course, we provide the basic infrastructure, and investor can come and following those incentives and be able to put up really the investment, put up decent and affordable houses, and our population Kigali can afford progressively and be able to acquire that piece of house and live a decent life in Kigali. That is our dream.
All right. So the proposed master plan will encourage use of public transport by at least 70% due to limited parking space for private vehicles. So what changes are you planning to make in the in the transport sector for this to be a reality?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, studies and policies are there. We have, first of all, to create dedicated bus lane to make sure that people can be able to live from their current way of moving. Those are like, I can be able to stop using my own car and move to the public transport means that are put in place, only that those are reliable means of transport. So that's why we need to create a dedicated bus lane. Studies have been conducted which really show how much time I can spend from a point to another, and also providing sort of organized way of moving around, And so we simply have to implement progressively depending on the means and be able to have a public transport sector that is really expected by people in Kigali. However, the agenda is, as I said, sort of more ambitious because the sector has been sat and come up with ideas on how we can improve the public transport in Kigali, and also considering the landscaping of this city. So are we moving to tramways or trains? When you look at the landscaping of Kigali, there are also some particular considerations that we can consider. However, there are also quick wins that we have to put in place. As I said, the dedicated bus lanes, also creating, as it is also provided for in the new master plan, which is one of elements that we considered, a mixed use development of our master plan, whereby you can put up a building with apartments, with shops, with offices, and when we minimize the movement of people living in that building or working in that particular building. So we are also encouraging the non-motorized movement along, the city where possible.
If you look at the city today, there is, I would say, the access to water and electricity is sufficient, but not enough, because there are shortages across the city, and like you said, the population is expected to grow by 3.8 million by 2050. So what efforts are you putting in place to meet the demand?
First of all, water, yes, water distribution. The production part of it is okay. I think from the data we have provided by the WASAC, yes, the production of water is really sufficient. We need just to make sure the connection from the source to the production source to the zoning and also the household is efficient. You can see Kigali is developing very rapidly, and in some cases we need really to change the pipes, to change the connection, to make it enough so that they can be able to provide enough water to a given point. So as per the plan, during the month of September, if I'm not mistaken, we were planning with the WASAC to see how we can cover the entire city by water production and connection to the households. Second point, in the new areas where, as I said, the government should also provide for physical infrastructure and also make sure that the physical plan is well done enough for people to go and start putting their infrastructure over there. We make sure that water and electricity as a first element is being put in place before we start developing the area. And this, for the new zoning, we make sure that the same mistakes that were made earlier are not being repeated. We simply provide enough water and also make sure the pipeline is being put in place to making sure that it is in line with our projections in terms of population, in terms of density of people that we expect to be having in a given area.
Let's go back to COVID-19. Some traders and tenants of commercial buildings in the city have complained that they are being asked to pay rent and some taxes while they weren't operational during the lockdown. So how are you addressing this one?
Well, that was a question that I personally got from both the tenants and households, not only in the business but also in some residential areas. We simply recommend people, first of all, to observe what the contract says, but also the households, the owners of those buildings, to be flexible enough to adjust to the realities. And it's just a recommendation. We do the advocacy, but our say doesn't take us to a next step, because this is an agreement that has been put in place by two parts and the parties. However, we do the advocacy and we make people to understanding that there is a crisis. Probably they can sue, they can suggest a payment in installments. They can also revise the terms of the contract. We are also affected by the same pandemic. We had contracts with the developers, and time has come for us to start paying. Now we are renegotiating for payment plan. We are also revising our plans so that we can start implementing in phases. I think the same applies to the private sector, and we call upon really just flexibility on both sides, simply because it is a one-to-one contract that has been signed, but they should just understanding that we are being faced by this pandemic. We do the advocacy, but we don't force people to go one way or another.
Allow me to bring your attention to the issue that has been raised by some of the players in the commercial real estate, who say that their business would be more viable if they had more policy support from the government. So do you plan to make any investments in this particular sector?
Can you be a bit flexible?
So
in terms
commercial real estate, it means some of the people who own buildings, if you look at the occupancy rate in the city, the percentage is not at a level that is...
I see. We have already started long time ago. Probably where we are still lagging behind, we can again push a little bit. We have some businesses being run in the residential area, which is, of course, not right, since we have nice buildings that have been set up to accommodate the business community, the business activities taking place in Kigali. So we've been really informing people to stop, giving them time to get ready and move into occupying those buildings that are being developed in the city. So we continue, but we are going to put an end to those activities taking place, commercial activities taking place in residential houses in different zones. That is our responsibility as well as the city.
Okay. Mayor, before we wrap this up, I would like to ask you the question that has to do with something Kigali is reputed for being one of the safest and cleanest cities, not only on the continent, but also in the world. What are some of the things that you are going to do, some of the measures you're going to put in place to sustain this?
One is keep the awareness of people living in Kigali to keep their city clean. It starts from our home, where everybody has to, for instance, target the so-called imihigo in our villages to plant 3 trees in our homes. You understand that we will be contributing to the green, city in terms of planting trees, but also keeping Kigali clean. It's a journey. We have already reached a very good point where everybody is now taking this as its own or an assignment to make sure that something bad doesn't happen in terms of keeping this nice city as green, as clean as possible. Now we also have to implement our plan and a policy of a green zone, where we are creating again non-motorized areas, as we have already created a non-vehicle area behind here in Kigali. We are also going to create another one in Nyamirambo and another one in Remera. It is still discussed with other stakeholders, and that is going to contribute to the reduction of the pollution in the city. We need to keep our policy in place and implement it of not using plastics you know, the policy is there, the law even is there, we need to enforce that law as a municipality. We need to make sure that our people are educated enough to make not using plastic bottles, for instance. It starts from our habit of consumption at home, in the office, and in the parties, meetings, and we can keep pushing that agenda of green city, green but also clean at the same time, and also reducing the pollution across the city but also across the country.
Lastly, are there some of the things that you envisage as hindrances that may prevent you from achieving some of the targets you've set yourself?
Okay, what we see currently is this economic shock that we are facing due to the pandemic. As I said, we had our own very ambitious plan that was initially very feasible as a municipality, but also extracted from the government key documents, NST1 and 7-year government program, and the particular city development strategy. Well, we are trying to adjust to the realities and see what is it that we can do to keep that very ambitious development plan of the city on track, while, of course, you understand that our expenditures are going to reduce a little bit, or our ambitious plan is going to be readjusted to the realities. So that is the key element that is really hindering our initial plan. But not that bad, because we are known as being a resilient city. So I think using the available means, putting in place also the existing homegrown solutions, there are a lot of things that we can be able to achieve in our plan and be able to move forward as earlier planned.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for your time, Mayor. All right. And that's all we had for today's conversation. You can interact with us by tweeting at CNBC Africa or tweet me directly at Stephen Muvunyi. Thank you very much for watching.